what kind of things kind of struck you, and you gave us some input too, some good feedback.
Sure. Well, what I saw here today is rare. That I saw a culture where employees were truly looking for improvement. They were interested in improvement. They received training in how to gather the data and the methodology behind different types of improvement, and that's rare. I mean, our country would be in a much better place if everybody did this, but it's rare practice.
Yeah, and that's the strategy. This book, I mean, this is many years, the 2 books of thinking that you guys have compiled all the information, all the data. It's hard work, isn't it?
Yeah, it's fun.
No, it's hard work for the organization. It's fun for you guys.
It's fun for us to gather all
It's
the data.
easier for you guys to come in and say, great, you don't have enough ideas, or you need more ideas, or you have good ideas, because you challenge us on innovation. We'll talk about that, but it's hard work for organization. What the heck holds them back?
Bring up an interesting point, which is we wrote that book, Ideas Are Free, as a labor of love, and one of my key life learnings was the same as what happened to Jim Collins, who wrote Built to Last and then Good to Great.
Right.
And same mistake. It's one that I've seen a lot of people make, and I shouldn't have made it myself. But we went around for Ideas Are Free, and we looked at 150 of the best idea systems in the world. Our methodology was go look at these, go examine them, understand how they work. And we wrote this book. And it became an international bestseller. It took off. It went all over the world. And about a year after it came out, we started to get lots of calls from all over the world saying, this is great, and I've done what you've recommended, and we didn't actually have many recommendations in that, and it's not working for me. And so it's a very different story of what these great systems look like to how to get there. And the parallel I've been drawing recently, and we don't draw it in the book, is you think about what happened in Iraq. We went into Iraq, and one of our goals was to set up a democracy, and we sent them all these Ivy League, State Department people who had no experience in setting up a democracy, and they failed, basically. We should have sent them Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton and Ben Franklin, who took a chaotic it was not a monarchy before in Iraq, but it was a dictatorship, same concept. And they actually made it happen. And so this second book is, we have obviously helped a lot of companies do this ourselves now, and we've also gone back to a whole new set of organizations and tracked them as they went through the journey to say, how do you actually set up one of these? And this, now I can get to your question, which is, this is hard to do. It's hard to do. It's much harder to do if you don't take advantage of all the learnings people have had doing it before you. And for the first time in this book, we have all those learnings, or most of them. Because so you can do it much faster now.
Yeah, and you really have to hold some people accountable. They're going to run it. There's an operating system to this.
Yes.
And you saw that we've had a very informal ideation group here. We ideate just like breathing, but we haven't formalized. So that holds us back from really true innovating, learning innovation, the next piece, and documenting.
Well, it reduces your, I mean, you understand you're in the top 1% of companies in the United States with what you're doing here. But yes, it has held you back from improving at a much faster rate, from going much deeper into your processes, because informality, when you make something formal, I don't need to tell if you do Lean, you understand this point, that not adding bureaucracy, but adding a formal system, just a simple PDCA cycle or whatever, can really accelerate your efforts. So as you formalize this ideation part, you've really just done the hard part first instead of the easy part first, because you created the culture first before you sort of put those formal systems in. And we recommend doing it the other way. If you put the systems in first, it just goes much faster. Yeah.
And that's where we're pulling back, and we're starting to see, really dig deep in our thought process on this. And some people are struggling with, well, now it's my opportunity to make a suggestion when they were ideating to begin with, and don't stop the ideation. And, the other thing that sometimes happens is that the people that ideate aren't really the best suited to execute. We had a discussion about that I'm trying to figure out in our organization. Who's the best resource to go to? Who's the quickest, most capable person that understands both upstream and downstream to execute this.
Well, as we wrote in the second book, and you have to understand also between Ideas Are Free and this book, the best practice evolved. This is a very fast-changing, field. It's like 3D printing. It's going to be totally different in 10 years from now. So what's happened is the best processes now are team-based processes. So and there have been a few papers in the academic space. There was one from a pair of people at INSEAD a few months ago that I saw that said that you need individuals to see problems because they're working with the processes and talking to your customers. But the next thing you do is you bring those problems to the team, and then the team works on them and then divides up the labor of implementing them. And that's the counterpart to the PDCA cycle in this idea system space. And if you have accountability, as I'm going to say tonight, most of the accountability here, one thing we didn't write as well as I would have liked to have seen in the book, now that I've watched people interact with it, is the reason why this is hard, and I won't deny it's hard, it's just you can make it easier, is that this is primarily a management transformation. And your frontline people are, as yours already do, they're going to love this. If you haven't done this before, typically, if you sort of do the right things or close to the right things, your frontline people will be nervous for 6 weeks until they see this is cool. We can change a lot of things that were a hassle to us before and make things better. The hard part is management, and we were starting to document this, and we saw this anecdotally that I just was in a company somewhere recently. Was it Milwaukee? I can't remember. But they lost 80% of their managers when, that's a figure we're seeing a lot, 70-80% of their managers, if they don't train them and coach them and mentor them, if they just expect them to go from traditional management into being, leading with bottom-up ideas, a lot of them can't handle it. So our data...
There's a lot of coaching involved.
A lot of coaching. And so our data is that 18% of managers will love this. They will just take to this like a fish out of water. 80% of the managers will go with this way, but they need to be need to be carried and sticked into it, made to try it, given some training and some coaching, and then they will never go back because they're so much higher performing managers in this new space than they were before. They won't go back, but it takes them a while to get over that hump. It can be a month or two of training and coaching. Then you've got the 2% of managers who just are command and controllers, and just it's all about them and me and my career, but people are often surprised by that 2% figure. We have data on this, and those are the ones, unfortunately, after trying to coach them and do the right thing, you have to get them out of management positions. So most people can make this change.
But the team building piece here, I'm going to go back to that because you kind of saw the strengths cards. You saw that in engineering.
I didn't see that. Yes, the strengths cards.
We're talking about strengths cards.
Right.
So this is, and I'm going to use your word because we had Mike Emiliani here. He tweeted out, "Who can define serendipity?" So it's serendipitous that you're here, and you can tell me if I have serendipity definition correct.
Okay.
What we look at in our organization is everybody's done a strengths test. Gallup does this. It's a Gallup Strengths Finder. And they give you your top 5 strengths. It's your DNA, why you come to work, why you even do the processes that you're involved with, why you live the life that you live with. So we get to look at what's our team look like beyond, the capabilities that mathematics, and this one knows how to measure things and somebody else knows how to smooth or whatever. But now we have some tangible things about your DNA, and we've been playing with this now for 10 years. Strengths, figure out who the people are, but the last 3 years we've been teaming people up because you can have superhumans, superhuman teams, because you don't want all the like thinkers, and that's very hard because how do you quantify? Do I have all the like thinkers in there? That's really hard to do. But the Strengths Finder kind of tells me the achievers, the doers, the ideation people, the strategic people, and through Gallup, they've set up a 4-quadrant matrix for what kind of people you put in that pod to super accelerate the thought. So I really like this team thing that ideation is for the individual. It's solo, monochromatic. They ideate, they think about something, but then you go out to a team because it's very, very broad reaching in organizations, even the smallest little thing. and you need many hands to make light work.
Right.
So have you guys thought about that, how to structure teams?
Oh, absolutely. But in this context, it's even simpler than that.
Okay, please.
So there's, you asked 3 questions wrapped into one there. So I'll start with.
That's why you're a doctor and I just build vibrators.
Well, doctors mean they store all the questions and try to answer them all. So the first of all, any organization needs multiple problem solving and innovation structures in it. So you don't just have, I'm working with one large hospital chain right now, and their only improvement tool is the A3. Mm-hmm. And that's all they do. If I spill water here, we're going to A3 it, and so
that's confining, you're saying?
Well, there's lots of different types of problems, and A3 is for something where you really don't know what the problem is.
Okay.
But, I understand the problem that's now there. I have to work in a different space.
Okay.
So you have, the U.S. Navy has 12 different problem-solving channels. Kodak had 7. Philips Medical has 4, and sometimes it could be. So from the point of view of the idea board system you have here, I go back to my teacher Shingo, who used to his favorite saying, which I found the lean, and I have not been heavily involved in lean for many years, but I go out and I watch companies do lean in ways that he would just be furious at, because his favorite thing to say was, I-E, you-E, everybody E, and he meant, because he called himself an industrial engineer, although he wasn't one in our classical sense. But he meant that the definition of continuous improvement to him, and it is to me, it's when everybody is improving all the time. So the superhuman model, and then there's one level where you want everybody doing it all the time. So the typical idea process has. It's the departments are the teams. So and in the department, yes, the groups will informally identify. In fact, it gets a lot more down and dirty than what you just described. You'll find that certainly in a large company, I was just in a meeting a few weeks ago where somebody said, I go hunting with the guy in IT who runs the servers. I can just ask him to do this on the side for us. Just toggle that switch. And not going through formal channels, but using my friendship with this person. So people have friendships, people have connections, people are good at doing things, people are good at talking, people are good at calling, researching. So problems are brought to the team, and the team then decides who's going to do which pieces of it. And the other thing about this is it's not just trying to assign the best thing to the optimal person. You're also, as another one of my teachers told me years ago in Japan, an idea system is a gigantic training tool. So you actually want people doing things that they're not good at. Okay. If something requires going and talking to 3 engineers, and there's a person who's a buddy with the engineers, well, maybe don't send that person, somebody who's never been to the engineering department before and doesn't know any of them. And yes, it'll take twice as long, but guess what? They'll know the engineers now, and they'll think of other things. So I prefer, and I agree, this has not been researched, although if I scan through all of my very high-performing idea systems, none of them make efforts to sort people by ability at that level. They want everybody involved, and if you have no experience with that, and if you're not good at that, we'll use that as a training tool for you.
And maybe I should roll with that. Everybody is involved here.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to take the system to the next level.
And that's
to
where
maximize on people's capabilities.
And that's where I was going to the multiple different layers. So
yes.
So at one level, everybody's involved, and irrespective of their skills, they pitch in, they all do it. Then you have the more complex problems, and for shortness, although I'm not so fond of this word, Six Sigma, or there are bigger, more project-based things where you're going to give people release time. Release time's expensive. You want your A team on this. Your competitors just come out with something, they can do it in half the time for half the cost, and you put your best people on that. Yep. That's where I would get very seriously, and most companies don't, so you're ahead of the game there, into the strengths. And I particularly admire, I'm trying to remember the name of the book, but the one that said, forget about your weaknesses, just go with your strengths. Most people can never change their weaknesses. It's wrong to
and
work
that's
on.
the preface of the Gallup. Go with your strengths.
Okay, well that's based on a book that some professor wrote. I'm trying to remember who it was, but it's escaping me
Marcus
right now.
Buckingham?
What's the name of the book?
Know your strengths?
No, that's not the one I'm thinking of.
But whatever.
But yeah, but that's the idea. And you know, it's funny, I may have to use a small swear word here, but I will tell you something that Jay Reardon said to us at Hickory Chair. He's done a bunch of transformations, and one of the great lean leaders of our time. And just at this conference we were talking about in your cafeteria, he said, one of the big lessons I've learned is whenever you start something, there will be people who will go along, just like we talked about, if you train them and coach them, there'll be some who'll naturally take to it. And then there'll be the assholes that you will never get to. And he said, my life advice to you is ignore the assholes. If you just ignore them and go ahead, it's the same thing as playing to your strengths, I'll say on an organizational base. What happens is the whole organization will start to move in your direction. The assholes will be sidelined and leave, or the systems will spit them out. Your promotion evaluation criteria will flag it to them. He said, so they will actually take care of themselves. And his big mistake in previous transformations had been to put all his energy into the assholes and ignore the people he should have been working with. So it's the same philosophy.
Yeah, they take up a lot of energy, a lot of space.
But ignore them is the
Ignore them, exactly. So the studies that you have here are really that this comes from the people most forward-facing. Most forward-facing. And it's really, I talk about the customer, the most forward-facing the customer because they're involved with the process, adding value to get something out the door, to get a patient through, to get somebody their license or whatever this is. And so many times the managers, because we train a lot of people from our state and a lot of people come and visit here, they think that there's a way to manage this performance-based management when they're really coaching and asking questions about what's getting in the way from a process to get us there, right? Mm-hmm. So how do we ideate? Are there any public or private, let me say public, cities or towns or municipalities that have taken you guys up on ideation? Because they're the most forward-facing. That's the biggest problem in the U.S. It's
now, you have to swear to me that you have not talked to Dean Schroeder in the last
I have not talked to him.
I will reveal publicly for the first time that our next book is on, it's really Ideas of Freedom Government.
A really, really profound thing.
We think so. So actually in a few weeks I'll be with him in Sweden, as we were talking about at lunch. A lot of cutting-edge practice is, for such a small country, it's amazing how, often these small countries you find some, like if you want to eat great fish, go to Portugal, it's like they're better than everybody else. Well, innovation, Sweden's a very small country, and they do some, amazing things. But in government, they are really applying these ideas. So we meet people holding our Swedish version of this book, saying we're applying this here.
Well, my dad helped proofread for you.
Oh yeah, appreciate that.
Yeah. You want to grab him, Mike? You just walk out the door. Let's see if he's there. But Sweden's doing some things.
Sweden has, so they have municipalities that are getting 10, 15 ideas per person per year, which is what, the average in the United States, last I looked, was, like 2 years ago, was half an idea per person, of which a third got implemented. That's our national average. And when you consider without too much effort, you can easily be at 25 ideas per person, and you see you're on a much greater improvement jag with that.
And you think on a global, on a domestic basis here, that all the state, federal, municipal agencies probably have the biggest customer. They have the whole United States as a customer base. That's their and it's divided up into their
we are working with some government agencies. I would really have to ask the permission to name them right now. But I will tell you that this works very well for them, because here's the dilemma. This is why they are jumping on it. This serendipitously, this wasn't really our idea. It was that governments started coming to us and saying, can you help us? So here's what we found. In the United States, in our context, we have a somewhat simplifying, but it's actually the phenomenon that's going on. We have two highly polarized sides, one of which wants to provide lots of services to people, and one of which is worried about the spending, right? Mm-hmm. So we have a very inefficient government, and a lot of that middle space is if we could just magically produce, if we got free from Mars, free, foreign aid of $200 billion a year, we would have everybody would be kissing each other in Congress, right? So the point is, we waste.
But we never attack the root cause of that.
So the middle part there's an enormous amount of waste and opportunity that nobody's tapping. So that's one piece. The politicians sort of, I get that. With a little bit of management work, I get that. But what really they like as well is this is right in the middle place where compromise is possible. But it's also, the way they would say it, and has been said to me, is the little people. We want to be a man of the people, or a woman of the people. So now think about this initiative. We're going to find all this money and find all these resources by going down and listening to the regular people who do the work. And that's who I am as a politician. I like that. So I have been with a lot of political figures who say, who love it for this reason. It's going to a place where they want to be.
The essence of what we're supposed to be.
What they are supposed to be as people and politicians. And then it also bridges the gap, which, anytime budgets get tight, arguments break out.
Well, when you get ready, if you need resources, our local DEM here, young lady by the name of Janet Coit heads up that group. And it started with Terry Gray, who works in the organization from a challenge. What was it, Eddie? 2009?
Yeah.
2009, an op-ed article. A lawyer came to visit us here. We had an open door Gemba walk. And he wrote an article about, wouldn't it be great if our own government, and especially the Department of Environmental Management, could be more business-like VIBCO, and apply lean principles.
Yep.
So that came out on a Sunday. That following Monday, Terry Gray called because he was curious. Someone threw a grenade.
Right.
He said, well, who are you guys and what are you about? So we had him come down and he did a tour. And he got really curious because he saw the processes that, we're building vibrators, but we have customers and we have papers and we have different things. And that's what started them on their lean journey. And Terry and a whole bunch, Dave Choppy and a whole bunch of the people there, Ron Gagnon, started working on this. And we did a report out 2-3 months ago. And when the head of your local AFL-CIO grabs you in the parking lot and says, how come more people don't know about this? I've never seen state employees so happy and so curious, and that they make the declaration that we really stink. We produce really bad outcomes, or we expect people to wait, not the outcomes because they're very good at their engineering and that, but they just couldn't understand. We never, we really never gave them predictable, stable outcome. Right?
Yeah. So
she'd be a great organization, and this is really where you save time and money for people. So it's not just about organizations. This is about the U.S. in general, and not even the U.S. This is about Sweden becoming stronger. This is about Greece becoming stronger, India, South America, U.S. That we really need to concentrate on what's going on and think about the people that are facing the front, showing them how to really give us the ideas instead of suggestions. And not showing them, but giving them the playing ground that they feel comfortable in doing.
And there are a lot of government organizations who are already doing this fairly well. And we're in the process of interviewing people who won every year the president invites the top suggesters in the U.S. government to go, and we're playing phone tag with her now, right? But we're going to have an interview. The winner last year saved, and I'm going to get this wrong, but I think it was $150 million with this single idea, and it's because of the scale of the operation. She worked for the Department of Agriculture, and I haven't interviewed her, so I'm doing it off of the anecdote just to make that clear. And she was one of the people who went into meat packing factories, food and food chain, take samples for bacteria and rush them to the lab, right? Because they have to be grown. She said every year we spend $300 million FedExing these samples.
300 million.
Well, nationwide. They're constantly doing it, and you want them doing that. But then,
FedEx is a good watcher of the lean nation. So.
Well, okay, no, and that's great. But she said, once they've grown the samples and sent us the computer reports by email, why do they need to FedEx the empties back? That was her simple observation. And it's not FedEx, it's why do we have that just set both ways? So they FedEx them only one way, cutting the bill pretty much in half, as you can imagine. Now, see, so you do that, and that's $150 million, and that's nothing in government. But actually,
it is something.
Well, I'm glad you agree. That's a couple thousand teachers.
There are tens and hundreds of more thousand ideas like that.
Exactly.
Once people see this, and you can yoke a tent, you can sideways shear, you can do whatever it is, and people, this is the innovation cycle.
Right.
Where now they take this ideation, now say, okay, how do we innovate? Why are we really doing this whole way?
Right. So some of the better government agencies that people would just name as, the best one I found in federal government, I went into 17, I think it was, federal agencies and studied their idea systems, was Social Security. And many people say, oh, they're a pleasure to deal with. Unlike, go to the IRS, they won't even answer the phone. Social Security will take good care of you. Parts of the DoD, I haven't been there yet. I was invited to go. I understand that the U.S. Army has always had an idea system, as has the Air Force and the Navy. But apparently the best idea system in the DoD is in Special Forces. And you'd say, why? Because they need to be the most adaptive and responsive of all.
Exactly. But what happens is that administrations change every 2-4 years depending on cycle. They haven't gotten this as a standard. You haven't infected enough people. Just the same as the book that we're trying to infect more and more people. But let's get back to the book here. You guys just released this, I think, 6 months ago?
No, 2 months ago.
2 months ago.
Yeah, it's pretty recent.
2 months ago. So what are some of the things that you'd want readers really to pay attention to? Because this was a bestseller. Ideas are free. Mm-hmm. So now we have the idea-driven organization. What's something that you want people to really pay attention to?
As I just said in your cafeteria, one of the things we documented, some pushback we got for Ideas Are Free, mostly from very senior leadership, who I would add are the most out of touch with what's going on in the front lines, is, I've got a lot of things on my plate. How important is this? And we realized that at their, companies like Toyota and Autoliv and Brasilata, they get this. This is essentially
their
their
top
strategy.
executives are walking through their factories. They're watching processes.
And they understand.
They're being Socratic.
Right. And they don't ask, what's the ROI of doing? What's the ROI of lean? Whenever I get that question.
They know that's the wrong answer to ask, because if they do the right things, then all those happen.
Yeah, and also most of, as Deming used to say, most of what affects your balance sheet you can't see with the numbers anyway. Right. So so that's one of those things where you need a bit more profound understanding. So people would say, well, should we do the corporate picnic? Should we do an idea system? Let's do the corporate picnic. It's about that level of intervention. And we wanted to say, no, we actually have a lot of evidence, which we didn't put in Ideas Are Free. So we spent, the first chapter essentially documents what we call the 80-20 principle, and that we're finding is creating this buzz because we're able to, years ago, the Japanese government did a study, and they found that for an employee idea system of average quality, on an operating basis, the ROI was 1,500%. So for every $100 you put in, you get $1,500 back in savings. They also found there was another study done.
You know where the NASDAQ and the Dow would be right now if we got those.
Oh yeah. And then there was exactly. So
that's huge.
I go into companies. I was just with the leader of a very large company who said, "What's the ROI on this?" And I told him that, and he sort of smiled and said, we just spent several hours debating whether this 30% ROI idea should go through. And I don't even know why we're thinking about this one. Yeah. So there were some numbers floating out there. Some of the better idea systems saved an average of $6,000 per employee per year. Those were floating around, but they were small studies of just 10 companies here, 50 companies there. So we set out just to document that. And what we've documented, and I'll leave the case to the book, but it is that 80% of any organization's improvement potential, and I could carry the thesis and innovation potential, lies in these bottom-up ideas. And most organizations, and I'm speaking not just for-profit companies, but not-for-profits and government, they're leaving 80% of their horsepower on the table. And that is the first 10 pages of this book, and then the rest of it basically says how you operationalize.
Do you talk to the leaders and the managers, the people that... Do you have a section in here where you talk to them about humility?
Yes, absolutely.
Ego, checking at the door.
One of the things that we found in this, we come in at the other end of this. We say, let's look for organizations that have made the journey for ideas driven to being idea driven, which means lots of bottom-up ideas, and let's talk to their leaders. So and see how they did it. So coming in that way, we found ourselves meeting some of the richest people in the world. We didn't write this in here, but one of the examples in the first 5 pages is from the Clarion Hotel in Sweden. the guy who owns that is the richest man in Scandinavia, and there's a lot of rich people in Scandinavia.
Oh, yeah.
He's worth billions and billions. His essential management secret is this. We also found ourselves at Zara, which to me is the lean benchmark in the world right now. And that's a Spanish clothing retailer. And we asked Amancio Ortega, who, Amancio Ortega is the second richest man in the world right now. I think his wife is like the 9th richest or something. His ex-wife. It shows divorce is expensive. And he founded his whole company. His business model is bottom-up ideas, and he said that's why we asked the COO actually. Then we said, what's the characteristic you look for in your managers? And this man said, humility. We have to look for humility. Without that, they can't live in this company, because if you have power in a situation and your subordinate is going to tell you ideas, you can't that it doesn't work if you're arrogant, which is the opposite of humble. It means if you're arrogant, it means I can't listen to what you say.
Or if you're a knower, you know everything.
You know everything. So you need that humility, and there's a bunch of stories in the book about how they not just look for humble managers, but they do things to keep them humble as they get tremendous power and money.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else in closing?
Not from me.
Not for you. Michael, did anybody answer our serendipity question?
I think somebody retweeted it, but no.
We haven't got any answers.
No.
So we're doing the broadcast, Lean Nation, and we're trying to check social media stuff. And Mike's been here doing that. But it's been a pleasure having you here.
It's been a pleasure being here. Thank you.
Lean Nation, and we're going to see you tonight at the Apex up in Warwick. And hopefully we'll see you back here, and you're going to give us some information about innovation, because innovation piece to this. Maybe just quick closing about innovation, because I'm still wrapping my head around. We're doing ideas as we breathe. We're doing things as we breathe, like the ideas and changing.
Right.
But innovation is our next big hurdle to wrap our brain around that.
Yeah, I mean, most companies have very weak cycles of continuous improvement, and you have stronger ones. But that's half of the picture. The other half is innovation, and less than 0.1% of the companies in the world have processes for innovation. And those are the ones you typically hear of as being the innovative ones.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot, there's a bigger body of knowledge in creativity and innovation than there is in improvement. So everything that your listeners have read about lean and improvement and continuous improvement, there's an equal amount of stuff on the innovation side, and you need to do both. And when you do both, and you get that synergy, that's explosive.
Yeah. And it's come across my radar screen in the last year 2 or 3 more times. So you're the third person now that's told me about it. Yeah, third time lucky, so I'm going to get that. And Alan, we're going to post your information, how to get a hold of you here on the screen. Did you have it up on the screen? So for our viewers here, this is how to get a hold of Alan and his organization. They can buy the book from what, Amazon? From you guys? From anywhere?
Yep.
Yeah. And you do speaking? You do
a
coaching?
lot of speaking, a lot of coaching, a lot of helping companies do this.
Yep. So if you have any questions about today's show, contact Alan. And again, Alan, thank you very much for being on Lean Nation.
Appreciate it.
And that's it for the Lean Nation. We're over and out.